Good evening, and I'm happy to report that we are finally finished with fractions. I don't know about you, but I was so sick of fractions, and I'm very, very excited that we are totally switching gears, totally away from fractions and moving on to bar graphs and graphing in general. We'll also learn about line graphs and double bar graphs and how to read them, but mainly we're just switching gears from fractions, so everybody should be excited. Big round of applause. You're clapping around in a circle, right? Anyway, all right, back to bar graphs. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. So this is a nice short video. Basically, bar graph, you may have seen these before, and you probably have interpreted them and answered questions about specific things on the bar graph and the information there. But this particular topic is making sure that we understand the parts of the bar graph. So first of all, we have to know when we use a bar graph. We use a bar graph used to compare data. Notice in this particular bar graph, I took a poll in my tutoring class on Tuesday, and I asked, okay, I want you guys to write down your favorite monster. I gave them actually only 4 choices, so there weren't a whole bunch that they could write down, but they could vote for one monster. And then I wanted to be able to compare and be able to see what is the most favorite monster amongst my students at tutor. So I would want to use a bar graph to show that data because I can easily look at it and see the Cookie Monster by far is the favorite among the kids that come to Tuesday tutoring. So we use bar graphs to compare data. And data is basically the information that you collect. Like I might do a survey, or I might just have someone write something down and then I collect data that way. All right. You have to understand parts of a bar graph. And these things are what I'm going to be looking for when you guys construct your own bar graphs. There's lots of elements that you need to make sure you have. Otherwise, your bar graph makes no sense. Probably the most important is your title. Just like a title for a story, this tells us exactly what our bar graph is showing us. All right, so you must have a title, and that's what this is right here. Okay, what else do you notice on this bar graph? Yes, you notice that over here we have a label. This is called a label, and it's for our X and Y axis. Do you guys remember X and Y axis? When we plotted points on a grid, we had our X and Y axis. But in bar graphs, we don't need to label them X and Y because we're actually going to be very specific about our labels that we put on the X and Y axis. So this right here is label, very important for our y-axis. Okay, notice that we don't need necessarily a label here because we can clearly see our categories, and it's also mentioned in our title up here where it says monster. So we don't necessarily need one there, but if you wanted to put one there, what would be a good title or label for this axis? Yeah, monsters. Basically just monsters. You can put monster names, monsters, whatever you want. All right. Now, here are 2 things that you may not be familiar with and are often confused. One is the scale. Can you figure out where you think the scale might be? Yep, you guessed it. The scale is right over here. The scale is only on the y-axis. If you were doing a line graph, you would have a scale on the x-axis as well. But we don't need it down there because we're looking at categories. So this is what we call our scale. Notice that it starts at 0 and goes higher than our last amount of data. We had 5 students vote for Cookie Monster, but notice that we go all the way up to 6. We want to make sure we have room at the top there. Otherwise, it's sometimes hard to read the graph if you don't do that. Or if you stopped your graph at 4, look, you wouldn't even be able to fit that Cookie Monster bar. So real important that you make sure your scale goes up high enough to include all of your data. And one other thing that I need to point out, and this is where students get confused, is the interval. The interval is the part of the scale that shows what it is going up by. Interval. This particular scale, when you look and you go from each number on the scale, what is it going up by? Okay, so this is the interval is what does the scale go up by? Have you guys guessed it? It's going up by 1s. Notice here, I might have to do a little bit of erasing so that you can see, oops, almost too much racing. This interval is going up by 1 right here. And then going from the next number from 1 to 2 is also 1. So our scale goes all the way from 0 to 6, but our interval is going up by 1s, and the interval is the same, going all the way up. All right. So the only other thing to do here would be to look at our data and answer questions about it. First of all, right off the bat, we can see what was the most popular monster. I'll put it on pause. What do you think? That's right. Cookie Monster right here was our most popular monster. All right. So take the notes, answer the questions that are on the page. That's basically it for our video. When you answer the questions, I want you to be looking at the video and thinking about what kind of question could I ask about the data that's in this graph. For example, I asked which monster had the most votes. That would be a question. So I want you to come up with your own question when you go back to do the questions section after taking the notes. It's going to ask you, come up with your own question for the graph shown in the video. I'm interested to see what you guys write. Anyway, have a good night. If you don't understand, just watch the video again. See you later.